We praise strength, but we underestimate the cost of holding it together for too long. No one tells you this. Sometimes resilience is the very thing that's wearing you down. So, what really happens when you don't allow yourself to break? We live in a society that glorifies resilience, a world that celebrates those who never break down, never complain, never show signs of exhaustion. From a young age, we're taught that strength means not crying, solving problems alone, and pushing forward no matter how much it hurts. But very few people ever tell you that this kind of misunderstood resilience, when taken too far, can slowly drain you from the inside out. Some people smile in front of everyone, but collapse silently when no one is looking. They don't want to worry others. They don't want to be a burden. And they're afraid that if they let go for even a second, everything will fall apart. So they hold it together. They bury their emotions, suppress their pain, and keep trying to prove they're okay, even when they're quietly falling apart inside. But is that really strength? Or is that the way we hurt ourselves under the mask of being fine? In today's video, we're going to analyze something many people overlook. Why does holding it together for too long cause deep emotional damage? And how can we tell the difference between healthy strength and harmful resilience? Modern culture often sends us one dangerous message. You have to be strong. Always. There's this unspoken belief that the only way to survive is to suppress your emotions, power through pain, and never let anyone see you struggle. It's embedded in everything from workplace expectations to social media narratives. Push harder. Keep going. Don't be weak. On the surface, these messages may seem motivational, but when absorbed without awareness, they become emotional poison. Dr. Brené Brown, a research professor at the University of Houston, has spent 2 decades studying vulnerability, shame, and emotional resilience. In her book, The Gifts of Imperfection, she writes, "When we trade authenticity for safety, we end up with anxiety, depression, eating disorders, addiction, and never fully realizing our potential." This quote reflects a reality many people silently endure. In trying to be strong, we abandon our emotional truth. We push down fear, grief, and doubt, hoping they'll vanish. But they don't. Instead, they fester. We put on masks. We smile when we're crumbling. We nod along in conversations, even though we're drowning in silence. And over time, we start to confuse this facade with our identity. We believe we have to be the strong one, because falling apart isn't an option. This kind of performance-based strength may be praised by society, but it comes at a cost. Emotional suppression doesn't make the pain disappear. It simply buries it deeper. And what's buried doesn't stay buried forever. It leaks out as irritability, exhaustion, anxiety, or even physical illness. According to the American Psychological Association, chronic emotional suppression is directly linked to elevated cortisol levels and long-term health issues, such as heart disease and depression. So why do we still cling to this myth of constant strength? For many of us, it was a survival mechanism. Maybe we grew up in homes where expressing emotion was punished or ignored. Maybe we work in environments where showing struggle is seen as incompetence. Either way, the result is the same: disconnection from our true selves. When you constantly tell yourself, "I don't have time to feel this," or "I need to hold it together," your brain listens, and so does your body. Emotional suppression isn't just a psychological habit. It's a biological event. The body doesn't know the difference between emotional stress and physical threat. So when you suppress strong emotions like sadness, anger, or fear, your nervous system still activates the stress response. And when this becomes chronic, the consequences are serious. Dr. Gabor Mate, renowned physician and trauma expert, states in his book, When the Body Says No, the repression of emotions can disorganize and weaken the immune system, making us more vulnerable to illness. In other words, the cost of being emotionally strong is often paid with physical health. High cortisol levels, adrenaline spikes, inflammation, these are not abstract ideas. They're real, measurable changes that occur when you force your feelings underground. Over time, this leads to what psychologists call emotional burnout. You may still function on the surface, going to work, taking care of others, keeping up appearances, but inside, your system is depleted. You might feel numb, disconnected, or chronically tired without understanding why. And because society doesn't always validate emotional fatigue, people often blame themselves. Why can't I handle this? What's wrong with me? Nothing is wrong with you. You're just not a machine. Neurologically, when we suppress emotions repeatedly, we weaken the brain's capacity for emotional regulation. The amygdala, our brain's fear center, becomes overactive. The prefrontal cortex, which helps us think clearly and stay calm, becomes overwhelmed. In simple terms, we lose emotional balance. That's why small things start to feel unbearable. That's why we snap, withdraw, or spiral unexpectedly. Suppressing emotions doesn't make you strong. It makes you distant from others and from yourself. And while emotional avoidance might help you get through a crisis, it is not sustainable. What begins as a temporary strategy can become a lifelong pattern, silently shaping your health, your relationships, and your sense of identity. The idea that we must always be strong doesn't come out of nowhere. It's learned, often early, often quietly, and almost always reinforced by the environment we grow up in. In many families, especially those shaped by hardship or generational trauma, emotional expression is seen as weakness, indulgence, or even danger. Children growing up in such spaces quickly learn an unspoken rule: don't cry, don't feel too much, and above all, don't be a burden. Over time, this becomes a deeply internalized belief. You learn that love might be conditional on how easy you are to deal with, that safety comes from silence, that being the one who never asked for help earns you value. These beliefs often follow us into adulthood, morphing into our behavior at work, in friendships, and especially in caregiving roles. This is why people who are seen as dependable, the caregivers, the listeners, the rocks in the family, are often the ones silently suffering the most. They're praised for how well they handle things. But no one stops to ask how much they've had to bury in order to keep going. They become the emotional foundation for everyone else, but inside they're cracking. Worse yet, the more competent you appear, the less support you're offered. People assume you're fine because you've always seemed fine. This creates a toxic feedback loop. The more you hold things in, the more invisible your pain becomes. And when your pain is invisible, it's invalidated by others and eventually by yourself. In many cultures, especially those with strong expectations around gender or responsibility, showing vulnerability is seen as failure. Men are told to man up. Women are told to be strong for the family. No one asks, strong at what cost? This is how generations of emotional suppression are passed down. This is how people end up trapped in roles they never chose. The strong one, the fixer, the unbreakable. And the longer you stay in that role, the harder it becomes to admit that you're not okay. Eventually, you forget how to reach out. Worse, you forget that you're allowed to. When you spend years pretending to be okay, something strange happens. You lose sight of what you really feel. You become so used to filtering, performing, and adjusting that you can no longer tell the difference between your real emotions and the ones you think you're supposed to have. You smile when you should cry. You say, "I'm fine," so automatically that it stops being a lie. It becomes your default identity. In trying to survive, you forget how to live. This disconnection doesn't just affect your inner world. It impacts your relationships, your work, your creativity, your ability to feel joy. You stop asking yourself honest questions like, "What I need right now?" or "What hurts?" Instead, your life becomes about what others need from you, how you can keep everything running, how you can hold it all together. And over time, even moments of peace start to feel suspicious. Rest doesn't feel restful. Quiet feels like failure. At that point, you're not just emotionally exhausted. You're emotionally absent from your own life. But here's the truth. The strongest thing you can do is admit when you're not okay. Real strength isn't about endurance. It's about alignment. It's about letting your inner world catch up with your outer image. And sometimes That means allow yourself to fall apart, not as a breakdown, but as a breakthrough. Giving yourself permission to feel, to cry, to say, I'm not fine, that's not weakness. That's how you reconnect. That's how you remember who you are beneath the performance. It takes courage to be soft in a world that rewards hardness. It takes strength to say, I need help, when everyone expects you to be the helper. But that's where healing begins. Not when you prove your worth by how much you can carry, but when you finally set it down. Because you don't have to carry it all, and you were never meant to. We are so often taught that strength means endurance, the ability to keep going no matter what. But real strength isn't just about pushing through pain. It's about knowing when to stop, when to feel, and when to finally say, I've been holding too much for too long. The cost of pretending to be fine isn't just emotional, it's spiritual. Every time we silence our pain, we drift a little further from ourselves. We become strangers to our own hearts, disconnected from what we truly need. And healing can't happen in that distance. Letting yourself be seen, not just the strong parts, but the messy, uncertain, aching parts, is the most human thing you can do. And it's also the most powerful. Because healing doesn't come from perfection. It comes from honesty, from softening, from giving yourself the same compassion you so freely give to everyone else. So, if you're exhausted, if you're holding it all together for everyone else, if you haven't heard your own truth in a long time, this is your invitation, not to break down, but to break open, to breathe, to feel, to begin again. You don't have to be strong all the time. You just have to be real. And in that realness, you will find a version of yourself that was never broken, only waiting to be reclaimed. If this message resonated with you, if you've ever felt the quiet weight of always being the strong one, you're not alone. This space was created for you. We'd love to hear your voice in the comments. Have you ever reached a point where you realized you couldn't hold it all anymore? What helped you reconnect with yourself? If this video brought you clarity or comfort, consider subscribing to Emotional Healing Space and sharing it with someone who might need it too. Every like, comment, and share helps this message reach more people who are quietly carrying too much. Thank you for being here, for choosing to feel, to reflect, and to heal. You are seen, you are enough, and you are never alone in this space.